2025 was going to end with such a treat for us badminton fans, because at probably the final tournament of 2025, unless you count the Japanese nationals that I think are going on right now, it is the time of the King's Cup. And at that tournament, we saw the return of one of badminton's greatest ever men's singles players, a player who had a rather tragic and unfortunate career. I'm, of course, talking about Kento Momota. King Kento returned to the court. Now, if you're not necessarily a badminton fan and you clicked on this video because it seemed interesting, then let me quickly explain two of those things. What is the King's Cup and who is Kento Momota? Starting with the King's Cup, this is a tournament that was organised and run by probably the GOAT of badminton, Lin Dan of China, a player who won 5 world titles, 2 Olympic Games, 2 Asian Games, 6 All Englands, multiple Thomas Cups, multiple Sydenham Cups. Basically, to put it in a nutshell, he won absolutely all there is to win in the world of badminton multiple times, and he did so with an absolute incredible flair and style that just transcended. And he's just a pretty cool guy, as you can see. If I ever put any of the social media stuff off from now in the build-up, he always got this air of like just coolness about him. He's just a rather cool guy. He obviously has been retired a number of years, and within China, he's been doing a number of things for badminton, trying to promote it through, I'm seeing online, like coaching stuff and other tournaments. He has the Lin Dan Cup, which is slightly lower level. I wouldn't say it's low level. God, if you watch that badminton, the players that are winning it, sometimes you're getting players like Angus, who's like a former top 10 player in the world and still top 20 to this day. But last year he put on his first ever King's Cup, which was supposed to be the absolute elite, where he invited 8 of the top players in the world. Well, last year it was a mixture of top players like Anders Antonsen, Alex Lanier, Alaksha Sen, and then on top of that he had a number of Chinese juniors like He An, and I can't quite remember off the top of my head. I didn't make a note of all the names. This year, he's brought it back again. We do have a Chinese junior. I believe he's the world junior champion. Again, I do apologise. I can't remember his name because he's not the focus of this video. But we've got players like Jonathan Christie, a former All England champion. We've got Anders Antonsen, a number of players that have been in the World Tour Finals. Sorry, for some reason, their results are leaving me. But players that have played in the World Tour Finals recently, we had that have played here. Jonathan Christie, Anders Antonsen, and Shi Yu Qi, who is the world number 1 and world champion. We had Jason Ter, who's a decent player from Singapore. We had Victor Lai, who was the surprise of the World Championships, got to the semi-finals, almost beat Shi Yu Qi, almost made one of the greatest upsets in World Championship history. I'm probably forgetting one person right now. Alex Lanier, France, only just missed out on a qualification spot at the World Finals, but an absolutely brilliant young player, only 19, 20 years old. And of course, rounding it out was Kento Momota. Now, let me quickly explain Kento Momota. I'm not going to go into all the details because I did do a video on this channel last year, in fact, going through his entire career. And the reason I made that video was because in April of last year, he announced his retirement. He then retired following the Thomas Cup finals, which were played not too long after he made that announcement. So he's been retired for almost 2 years. Just to list a couple of his achievements, because there's numerous ones. He's a former All England champion, former 2-time world champion, Asia champion, and he was an instrumental part in Japan winning the 2014 Thomas Cup. His career spanned quite a bit, but it was a career that was mixed with a lot of unfortunate events. Just before the Rio Olympics, when he was really started to make his first strides in badminton, he got caught gambling alongside Kenichi Tago and was given a ban, but he was allowed to come back. And from then, he made an absolute roaring return, became one of the most dominant players in men's singles, quickly rising through the rankings. And within less than a year, he'd got back up to world number 1. He'd become world champion, All England champion. I think he's won the World Tour Finals as well. And then in 2019, he finished that year on 11 titles. That's something that's been spoken about quite a lot recently, with Eun Seong also winning 11 titles this year, Kim Won-ho and Serson Jae winning 11 titles. And there's a few others that have won 11 titles in a year, but the one that everyone remembers is Kento Momota, who did it in the men's singles. Absolutely, truly extraordinary. And many people believe that had he not had those unfortunate incidents and was still playing today, that possibly some would argue all the results that you see Victor Axelsen with, who's a 2-time Olympic champion, a world champion, a couple of All Englands as well. All the 1000s probably would have belonged to Momota. I know you could argue against a little bit. I'm not saying he would have definitely won all of those. There's a lot of different factors going in, but he probably would have won the majority. And we might be sitting here going, is it Kento versus Lin Dan in the GOAT debate? And that would have been a debate that had been very hotly discussed at this point in time. But sadly, that wasn't the case. And that's why, when obviously at this King's Cup, which is run by Lin Dan, organised, that Kento Momota was announced to come back, the badminton world went absolutely mental, myself included. Because he's such a star, because of his style, and because of the somewhat sad story behind him. Like I said, everyone was excited when it was announced. But there were also some question marks around his participation in this tournament. I think a couple of people actually thought, would he actually turn up? Would he actually be there? Because we'd heard this before. I think last year he was supposed to play in the King's Cup, but something got in the way that he wasn't able to. I think it might have been an injury thing. I know he's had some injury issues in the past, actually this year. And that leads on to the next question. What shape would he be in? I already mentioned that he hadn't played competitive badminton since pretty much May of 2024. So that's a year and 3/4. And if you take that much time off, playing international level at the highest level, your sharpness, your reading of the game, your ability to get used to kind of that pressure and that, being on a singular court as well, even for someone as decorated as Momota, even for someone that made it look incredibly easy when he was at his best, that's a long time away. So there were some question marks over his shape. There was also some question marks about his shape because earlier in the year, I read that he had surgery on his back for a herniated disc. Now, back surgery is something that's not easy to recover from. A herniated disc is incredibly painful. And with badminton being a sport where you need to run backwards and bend over and all this stuff and then come forward and back, it's a lot of stress on your back. So for the fact that he had that injury, again, question marks over what kind of shape would he be in. And then I guess that would lead to how would his game be? He admitted when he retired last year, a big reason was because in 2020, he had a car crash, a very unfortunate accident. It was a turning point in his career, and it basically from then on, he went from being the most dominant player in the world to someone that really struggled. He did win a few tournaments, he did have moments where he came back, but then he kept getting other issues. And the big reason why he retired was because he just felt that his vision had never come back. It had been permanently impaired. It was always going to be a factor. He would always see slightly two shuttles, and when you're on one of those courts, courts with all the TV lights, it's only going to exacerbate it. So for me, it was going to be, had his eyesight, was it going to be good enough? Because when he was playing before, you could see that his defense was a little bit off because maybe he couldn't quite read the situations. His accuracy, which was something that he was also so good at, was a little bit impaired because of his eyesight. Also, his judgment of lines in his last matches of his career, there was a number of times where he would lose matches because he would just leave things that were miles in, something you wouldn't expect top players to do, but he was clearly just misjudging it. So all of these things did lead to a lot of questions, and wondering whether he could bring his old magic back. There were some people, obviously, with all these questions in mind, there were some people that were just pure-heartedly confident in Kento Momota. They were like, yes, he can bring his old magic back. There were some who felt he might even struggle to score 10 points in total. And then there was some who simply weren't sure. For me, if I'm honest, I was someone who was in the unsure bracket. Because I felt that being away from just that level of competition, even though it fell at the end of the year where a number of the players that were announced into the draw would be very tired. I already mentioned they played World Tour finals. That was only a week or so ago. And to get to the World Finals had been a long season, as it always is. So fatigue and all those things were always going to be a factor. But even with those in mind, these are the best players in the world. And so Momota having been away for so long, maybe it would be a bit difficult for him. I was half expecting to see some odd moments of magic. He would still look pretty smooth and Momota-esque, but just would struggle to win points or would struggle to kind of stay in the game once his opponent had kind of got into the match. And that was my honest on opinions, and obviously because he retired because he couldn't see particularly well, his vision was impaired. I already mentioned all those factors, just enough doubt at my feet. But in all honesty, at the same time, I was just quite happy to watch him play. It didn't matter if he had turned up and he had lost, like 6-6. It would have just been really nice to see him on court, as long as he looked happy, as long as he was enjoying himself and he put on a show. People, I think, paid to go there, and a lot of people were watching this online, myself included, was just to see him again, just to see him on court. He's that kind of player that just made everyone just enjoy badminton. If you watch Momota, you couldn't come away from watching his match not enjoying it. It's just not really possible. He had such a lovely style, such a lovely way about playing him. And as he got older and older, just his personality as well just exuded this kind of, it's like kind of what you'd expect from a Japanese player, very zen-like and just really down to earth. Also, before I get into the match, because when the draws were released for the King's Cup, I think all that uncertainty, especially for me, was highlighted a little bit more because he was drawn in the King's Cup. It's only 8 players. It's only men's singles. So it's a straight knockout from quarterfinals onwards. And in his quarterfinal, he was drawn against Shi Yu Qi of China, who is the current world number 1, current world champion, male BDF, male player of the year, BDF players, player of the year, won 3 out of 4 Super 1000s, had a pretty extraordinary 2025 season. So not only Momota was coming back after 2 years off, he was going to come against the best player in the world. He was going to be playing the best player in the world. This match obviously did bring up some excitement because they had played each other in some huge finals in the past. In fact, they've played, from what I can see, in 5 very big finals. The World Championships in 2018, the World Tour Finals final in 2018, the Asia Championship final in 2019, and twice in the Sudirman Cup final in 2019 and 2021. They also played in a couple of other big matches outside of finals, but those 5, that's pretty huge tournaments. If anyone doesn't know, the Sudirman Cup is the World Mixed Team Championships. So there's 3 world finals, the biggest World Tour event, the World Tour Finals final, and then the Asia Championships, which is also held in a similar regard as a Super 1000. That's how strong they are. So that gives you some indication of some of the big matches that these two have played in. Now, drawing Shi Yu Qi was a bad draw. You cannot deny that. But Shi Yu Qi was also a player with some question marks against him. Because, I said he'd played in the World Tour Finals. He reached the final of the World Tour Finals. So would fatigue be an issue? He did look a little tired in that final World Tour Finals. Also, he had a bit of a foot injury in that final. I think it was a blister, a rather nasty blister. And I think between that final and his match with Momota was literally 5 days. And whilst both tournaments were held in China, they're in different areas. There was travel time and all that stuff. So you kind of, for me, there was some big question marks. And also the kind of pressure to be on Shi Yu Qi, because he was kind of expected to win. The last, I think, 2 or 3 times he'd played Momota in regular tournaments, definitely the last 2, he'd won in straight games relatively comfortably. So, and I think being in China, people expected Shi Yu Qi to get another win, regardless of whether he was tired or not. So there was some pressure on him and all that kind of thing. And so it wouldn't be an easy match. As a result, for me, when I went to watch it, I was kind of like, I had those question marks over Momota, but I had some question marks over Shi Yu Qi, and I know they know each other really well. Like I said, I was just excited to see these two guys do battle once more, but at the same time, I felt because of the questions that maybe it could be quite a close match. And that leads nicely into me finally talking about the match. Now, it didn't take long to get some answers to those questions that were against Kento Momota. He looked fit, he looked strong, he looked confident, happy on court. And for someone who hadn't played competitive badminton in almost 2 years, he looked pretty damn sharp. As the match went on, that sharpness did fade somewhat. I think the 2-year gap, or almost 2-year gap, did take its toll a little bit, understandably. But for most of the first game, Kento Momota was leading. The style he was using was also classic Kento Momota. Beautiful control and nice touch. He was moving Shi Yu Qi all around the court. And it was also complemented with some really nice accurate attack. There was a lot of times where he'd get up around the head and he'd thread it beautifully down the line. It was actually the kind of badminton that we saw a little bit at the Thomas Cup in his last tournament, but I must also remind people that at that Thomas Cup, the opponents he played, none of them were of a Shi Yu Qi level, not even, in all honesty, really that close. So it was a kind of like a bit easier for him to use that. When he played against other really good players, bar a couple of times in his last year or so of his career, he rarely showed some of this attack in badminton. So it does show that he has been training. He did admit that he has been training every day. He runs for an hour every day. He's still getting on court. He's a coach at his club, NTT East, who has a player in their club, Yushi Tanaka, who I really like. Very attacking, very good badminton player. Been Japanese national champion, top 20 in the world. And I think regularly Momota has been getting on court and playing him. I think he admitted that the reason he does that is because the players that he coaches are going to be much more invested and believe in him if he can still do it. So until he can't do it anymore, he will. So clearly, all the training that he's been doing, all the hard training he's done, was paying off. You could see that he looked pretty fit. Although I would say in the first 11, I did have some question marks over his fitness. He did look to be blowing rather hard, but I'm not sure whether now, as the match progressed, and I've now got the full match in context, that actually that might have just been the nerves and pressure of playing against such an opponent on such a stage, because the arena as well was fully packed. Everyone turned up to see Kento Momota. So quite if you never played in that, you don't quite know how it feels, but it is quite different. I didn't obviously play to that level, but I've played in those venues. And I can imagine if I had to go lump myself in there now, it would be quite something to get used to. So maybe that's why Momota in the start, the opening 11, whilst he was playing well, he did look to be puffing a little bit. And I was a little bit unsure as whether his fitness was actually really good. But I think it actually, as the match went on, his fitness didn't really seem to fade all too much. I also noticed that his judgment of the lines and his accuracy were pretty spot on. So any of those question marks over his eyesight and his judgment, for me, got answered pretty quickly. He looked very, very good. He looked like the Momota of old, just an older version. You know, like if you watch some classic Lin Dan, even from 2015-16, and some would argue that's him near the end of his career, and then look at him in, say, 2018, 2019, it's still world-class quality. Just that little bit slower, just lacks that little bit of sharpness and something extra special. But you can tell it's still Lin Dan. You could tell that from Momota, he still had all that class, his ability. I mean, yeah, that's never really going to fade, but I don't know, it was just really, really nice to see. Now, I said Momota was leading for pretty much all of the first game. He was helped by Shi Yu Qi, that was making a number of errors, mistakes, and highlighting, I think, that he also wasn't firing in all cylinders. And while Shi Yu Qi would eventually gain control of the match, Shi Yu Qi's errors throughout didn't really fade. He still maybe he tightened up a bit, but overall the number of mistakes that he made was far too high of a player who is world #1 and world champion. But I'll let him off because it's been an incredibly long and difficult season, and again, no matter what shape Momota's in, playing him is always going to be a bit of a challenge because of the skill level that he has. Now, one thing I noticed, again, until I kind of move this on a bit, one thing I noticed Shi Yu Qi doing, which I thought was quite a smart tactic, and he did this throughout the match, and that was that he played a number of shots to Momota's front court backhand area, whether it was from a slice, whether it was from a deceptive hold, a cross court net. He was trying to get Momota a little bit late into his backhand. Rarely did he do any full cross court power smashes. It was usually with a little bit of slice or a drop, really bringing him forward. Now, that's a tactic that I've seen Anthony Ginting use, but the other way with the reverse, I was getting Momota down to his sharp forehand, and it was always quite effective. And I think Shi Yu Qi was using this for a couple of reasons. One, his best shots are that way. His straight slice from the round the head corner, his cross slice drop, his fast slice drop, or slice, sorry. His deceptive hold from his backhand is really good back to the net. They're all shots that go fall in Momota's backhand corner, as Momota is left-handed. So that's one reason as to why he's doing it. Another reason I felt is I didn't see Shi Yu Qi really go for the full smashes. Maybe he was feeling a little bit tired. He was just a little bit off. He couldn't quite get in behind the shuttle. But I think he was doing it because he wanted to chip away at Momota's legs. Maybe he felt that if I go all in, Momota won't have to work too hard. He'll just get used to the speed and he can kind of deflect the shuttle and stuff. Whereas if I get him to move forward constantly, the first game or so ever, Momota can probably deal with it. You know, it's not like he's going to create loads of winners, but it's almost going to be like a death by 1,000 cuts, just constantly chipping away and really working Momota's legs. Because not only is it going to be hard for him to get down there, but then to control from there is more difficult. And not only that, say he lifts it and then Shi Yu Qi goes for the big attack, Momota has to come back into his defense very quickly. And that kind of change is very hard. I think when Momota was set on his defense, really, really good. Again, that's another thing that I thought I had doubts. So I did it initially before I even watched the match. I had defense with a question mark. And Momota, when he was set, his defense was looking as good as it ever had. And I think that Shi Yu Qi realized that pretty quick and also started to kind of play these drops, especially down to that backhand, to try to open up the court a little bit. So he was doing it for a number of reasons. One, probably he wasn't really feeling 100% in a good position to full attack. 2, I think that's his favoured shots. He's got some really nice shots, especially to Momota's backhand corner. I think he was trying to chip away at Momota's legs, maybe tire him. Kind of like it's like a boxer, just jabbing. It's not really doing a massive amount of damage in one go, but lots of it over and over throughout a match. By the end, I think, and as you will see, as the way the match went out, I think it was a good tactic. And also just to kind of move him away from base, so then when he did go in, Momota was maybe a little late to get ready, and then maybe there was more opportunities to do it. So it was, I thought, a really smart tactic from Shi Yu Qi. Now, as the first game progressed, it became more apparent that it would be important for Momota to win it. I said physically he did look good. I thought he'd actually looked pretty strong, especially after that initial doubt of him in the first half. In the second half, really, really good. But I could tell the long rallies were hurting him. Not just physically, but to maintain that quality, the required quality, something Momota used to be able to do like without any thought. That was probably his strongest area of his game. There were many strong areas, but here, obviously, with the lack of practice and playing at this level, I can imagine that maybe he would start to get a little desperate. So winning that first might have just helped him. I felt that losing it, it would feel like too big a mountain to climb. That's not to say I didn't think it was important for Shi Yu Qi, just that little bit more for Momota. At the end of the first game, it got very, very tight. Shi Yu Qi closed the gap, and we're kind of going point for point to the end. And I noticed at the end of the first, when it was tight, the Momota was really focusing in and around the front of the court. He wanted to apply a lot of pressure here. Momota, again, I've mentioned many of his good qualities, but another one he was so good at was his net control. The ability to kind of play very, very tight net and drop it in and just put a lot of pressure. And if you play a good net, not only is it more difficult for your opponent to lift, but you can get short lifts, you can get opportunities to kill it. All those things you can shorten the rally, which if Momota was feeling a bit tired, doubly would make more sense that he was going to do it. But unfortunately for him, fair play to Shi Yu Qi. Shi Yu Qi was that little bit sharper. He won the net battle. There were a number of times right at the end of that first where Momota would play a net shot and Shi Yu Qi would spin it back or play it back, almost unreturnable, net cord rolling over. I can't even remember. I think the first game might have even ended on something like that. And I think the way that the end of the first went with that net battle, that did bleed a little into the second as to how Momota approached it, and maybe something that he possibly could have changed. Now, I must also say before I get on to the second game, because Shi Yu Qi did win it, it was 21-19, very close, but there was that cross-court net shot at 16-15 to Momota that was called out that Momota wasn't sure of. It was very close. There was no Hawkeye here at the King's Cup. I think had that maybe been called in, it could have turned out differently. Maybe Momota could have. He looked like he was on a bit of a resurgence. At that point, kind of knocked him and maybe made him feel like the day wasn't his. But no, it was Shi Yu Qi who won the first game to 19. I did feel that watching it then, as they changed ends, the second might be a little easier for Shi Yu Qi. I just got that feeling that Momota was always very good at, even if he lost the first game, fighting back and all that stuff. But just with the current shape of Momota and just the sense I got, and I think Shi Yu Qi got a bit of a boost from that. I just felt that the second game would kind of, I wouldn't say run away. I didn't think that, but I just felt that Shi Yu Qi would win it a little easier. And as it transpired, it did kind of go that way. Shi Yu Qi tightened up on a few of his errors. He did look a little more comfortable in the match. And also, I think, as I said earlier, Momota started to make a few more mistakes himself. He was possibly, for me, it seemed like he was forcing certain shots. There were a couple of really long rallies in the opening of the second. And there were a few times where Momota, I think it was like 7-all, he hit like 2 clear errors out the side, which he wasn't making. Maybe he was just trying to go that little bit more precise. Maybe he was trying to apply that little pressure because I think I got the feeling that in the longer rallies in the opening game, Momota looked the more in control. He looked the more comfortable in them. But in the second game, I felt Shi Yu Qi looked more comfortable. He kind of got himself into the match. He felt good having won the first game, and those long rallies just weren't hurting him. He kind of was like, it was like he just warmed up in a way, like really warmed up and was starting to flow. And I think Momota could feel that. So didn't want to engage in too many long rallies if he could avoid it. So maybe on his clears and his lifts, going for that little bit sharper, that little bit more to the lines, that little bit more speed and sharpness to kind of get Shi Yu Qi a bit later. And if you do that, it's always going to be a little bit harder to control it, especially as as the match was going on, you get more tired. And I think that's what we saw. Now, I said something about the end of the first bleeding into the second, and this is the follow-on for me. So I said at the first, at the end, Momota was trying to play a lot of engage in the tight net rally, but he was beaten there by Shi Yu Qi. And Shi Yu Qi played the net just better. You know, there's always going to be a little battle there, and Shi Yu Qi came out on top. Now, for me with Momota in the second, I felt he should have gone back to the net, even though he lost it earlier, and it's no guarantee that it would have been any different in that second. But I just felt that, I think, to shorten the rallies or to create more pressure onto the Shi Yu Qi side to unsettle him, I think he should have maybe gone for a bit more, at least on a couple of occasions. There were a lot of times in that second I felt there was chances to put it in tight or to do something, and he would block through or lift. It was almost like he was like a little bit worried of taking on Shi Yu Qi there. And whilst rightfully so, personally, I think Momota should have made an effort or just taken the chance. Right, I'm going to take you on again. Let's see if this time I can beat it. Because I think that would have got away from the longer rallies a bit. Maybe, like I said, could have unsettled Shi Yu Qi. But that wasn't to happen. And in the end, like I said, Shi Yu Qi came out winning the second game 21-14. Now, what I will say also, lastly, before I kind of wrap this up, is Shi Yu Qi got a little bit of a lead. There was a point at 15-11, so 4 points to Shi Yu Qi, and Momota really went for it then. Like, he looked a little tired. He made a few of those mistakes I've spoken about. His pace dropped a bit, and it was almost at 15-11. He's like, right, okay, I've got to do something different. He didn't feel comfortable, still didn't want to do the net. So what he did was he went more attacking and he went faster, and he really went for it at that point at 15-11, but he still came out second best. And when that point finished, I was like, okay, I'm like 99% sure that Shi Yu Qi's going to win this match. Momota still hung in there. He kept with that tactic pretty much for the remainder, and credit to him, he did it really, really well. Pulled off some absolutely brilliant shots, but there were some mistakes, and Shi Yu Qi was also, he was wise to it, and a player of his level, he was able to deal with it really, really well. So, yeah, second game, as to be expected, as I thought it would happen, was a little easier, but credit to Momota. Like I said, he really threw the kitchen sink at Shi Yu Qi at the end, trying to do something. But when he came out of that at the wrong end of that rally at 15-11, for me, that really felt like the beginning of the end. And I will end by saying I felt like it was a fitting way the match ended, actually, because Shi Yu Qi won it by playing that cross drop from his forehand with Momota not able. He got his racket to it, but wasn't able to make it over the net. We see, if you watch that match back again, just count how many times. I didn't count it myself, but I would be surprised if it's not double figures. The amount of winners or shot, or like the rally finishing maybe 2 shots afterwards from a shot to that backhand. It happened quite a lot. But my final thoughts. I absolutely loved watching this match. It was a real throwback, and I felt Momota played really well, like really well, for someone who hasn't played competitively at this level in such a long time. I can't stress how much time away from the courts can make you just see the game that little bit slower. You can just be a bit off the pace. Even if you've played a lot in practice, tournament play on the matted courts in an arena with a world-class opponent, with a crowd in there, all those factors, if you haven't had that experience for a while, even if you have been someone as high in the world of Momota, like a world champion, 2-time world champion, time away is going to be quite a devastating factor. So I was really impressed. I was also, you could tell how competitive Momota still is. I think when he lost, he looked so disappointed. There's still fire in his belly. He just looked like someone who's like, oh man, I think I could have won that. He was probably already thinking about what he could have done differently. He just didn't want the match to end. He really wanted to win. And that was absolutely brilliant to see. You can kind of see it. Like, he admitted afterwards how much he enjoyed it. To feel that world-class environment again, it was like, I think he really missed it. But that competitiveness, that desire to win, which was something that I remember him saying, that it doesn't matter how I do it, I'll always try to find a way to win. That's still there. And he still showed it throughout this match. It was a lovely moment at the end when both players embraced. I saw Shi Yu Qi do it at the World Tour Finals with Cho Chien Chen, another older player who's still knocking it about at the absolute highest level. Out of respect, was like, no, bring it in, man. Let's hug it out. He did the same with Momota, and that was quite a nice moment. So now with Momota back on an international court, pushing the world number 1 and world champion, many are wondering, or many have been wondering, whether this is the beginning of a potential comeback. I know if he announced, Momota said, I make a comeback, the badminton world would absolutely blow up. But sadly, it isn't, because Momota admitted after that he probably, the translation on Instagram says probably, so not 100%, but I think most likely that he won't be returning to BWF tournaments or international events. But the tournaments such as the King's Cup, he would. And for me, that's good enough. He's also said he probably might play the Lin Dan Cup, which would be really good because they're a bit more regular, slightly lower in level, and Momota would be perfect. We've seen Sean Wan Ho play one of those ones, a former world number one and a fantastic player from Korea. So it'd be really good to see Momota. Maybe, I know the BXL, the event I was involved with, don't want retired players, but Momota, maybe you could technically deem him not 100% retired. Maybe BXL can kind of twist their rules and get him in. He would be absolutely brilliant to see. I'd love to see him live and commentate on him. That would be absolutely fantastic. So for me, Momota showed a level I think that he could. It's a shame he isn't returning, but I understand why he's choosing not to. He's made his decision. He understands probably maybe he can't commit to the full training or whatever. I don't know. There's probably other reasons that he's keeping to himself. But he did show a level that he showed why he is such a world-class player, such a classy player, and why so many people like him. And I think based on what I saw, he could get back into the top 10 with what he showed. It would take a hell of a lot of effort. I think it wouldn't be as simple as give him a few tournaments to be back. It would take more than that, because while he was playing well, it was nowhere near his best. And I think men's singles is really, really competitive and tough. It's not to say that he couldn't beat the top 10, any player in the top 10 on his day. He did push the world number one, but let's not forget Shi Yu Qi. Also, personally, I think he wasn't firing on all cylinders in his match against Kento Momota. Whilst I do think that he has that ability, he still shows that he's got a great level. I think we shouldn't romanticize it too much. The top 10, even if he wanted to, the top 10 would be really hard for him to get back into. But for me, I'm just glad that by the sounds of it, we should be seeing more of Momota playing, and I, for one, can't wait to watch that. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this video up here. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a nice quick one I thought I'd get out. Once Momota was going to play, I thought I've got to talk about that, especially if he plays well. Even if it had been a Ben Beckman v Chen Long drubbing of 20-5, 20-5, I still would have spoken about it. But yeah, no, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, feel free to add your own thoughts and comments below. Like the video, share it, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, then please consider doing so. It would really help me out. The subscriber count of this channel is steadily growing, but maybe not quite at the rate that I would hope for, but that's fine. I'm in this for the long game, and to be honest, I just really enjoy talking about badminton. I hope that comes across. So yeah, I wish everyone nothing but a happy new year, and I'll see you shortly in 2026, because obviously I've got to talk about what to be expected in 2026. And also, let's not forget the Malaysia Open 1000 starts in like the second week of 2026. No rest for the weary, as they say. So, until next time, everyone, I'll see you later.